We are from Carlisle, little town, 3 exits on 81. You probably drive past us if you go on 81 all the time. And I've been a member of the band now for, I guess I could say 25 years. I was gone for a chunk of that time, but I've really enjoyed that time in that band, and it's got a very unique history. The longer I've been with the band, the more I've learned about the history. I thought you might find some of it interesting. Dave told me one time, we used to be known as, or maybe we still are, as the music town, or the town with all the bands. Carlisle's a small town. Right now we have about 22,000 people who live in it. It's about a quarter of the size of Reading. And we definitely kind of punch above our weight musically for a lot of reasons. We have a lot of very strong institutions in the town. We've got our band, which has been there since 1844. We've got Dickinson College, which has a strong music program, primarily orchestral and choral. We've got Carlisle High School, which has had a very, very strong music program. Dave was instrumental in that, and he's going to talk about that. And we have some links to some very interesting historical characters. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of flavor about that and understand the band. We're not the oldest. 1844 is when the first piece showed up. The first organization was. We're not the biggest, although we put 65 to 70 people on the stage. And we're not the best, but we think we're a pretty good band. So that's kind of my context of giving that to you. The band was formed in 1844. Interesting story, there was a political rally in town, and a band came up from the Chambersburg area and was marching as part of that political rally. And some young men in Carlisle said, darn, we need to have a band too. And with that, the first Carlisle brass band was formed in 1844. The early years were an interesting time. Like a lot of community bands, they evolved, they changed names based on who was paying for them, who the leader was, who the sponsor was, but there was a very strong thread when you go back and you look at the members of the bands, and we have their names. Although the names of the bands might change, it was the same thread of people throughout. In fact, if you look at the pictures of our band from the late 19th century, we recognize about half the names. There's still people that are in the town, which is really neat to see that and understand that. The band, evolved over time. It had a strong relationship throughout that time with Dickinson College. It had a strong relationship with the Indian Industrial School, which I will talk about. And at one point, it became a National Guard band. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail, but essentially the band was always struggling to find money. And at a certain point, according to our history, they were asked if they would like to be a band for a Pennsylvania National Guard regiment. And the benefits of that were they got some instruments, they got some money, and they got uniforms. There was a different side of being in the National Guard I'll talk about a little later. But the band was pretty consistent throughout that time, performing at functions in the town, ceremonies, concerts, and was considered to be, a good, reliable source of entertainment within the town. A large chunk of our history of music in Carlisle involves the Carlisle Industrial School Band, or the Carlisle Indian School Band, depending on what time frame the name would evolve. There's a lot of controversy about the Carlisle Indian School. When people think about it, the positive things they may remember about it are Jim Thorpe, greatest athlete, Pop Warner, football coach, Carlisle Indian football team. But at the time, one of the most famous assets of the Indian school was the school band. Dave's going to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The Indian school band, I'm not quite sure how it ever started. I can talk to you a little bit about one of the leaders of the band and a composer, Dennison Wheelock. Dennison Wheelock came from the Oneida tribe in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He was an Indian and a student at the Indian Industrial School. He entered that school at age 14, which would have been about 1885. Just to give you a little historic perspective, let me get my note here. Dennison was born in 1871, died in 1927. Sousa, 1854 to 1932. So he's in that zone. So he was a student and a musician at the school and graduated around 1890, but re-enlisted. So, you know, we talk about all the negative things, but there was some positive things going on for these folks. Re-enlisted and came back for a couple years and then left. And they brought him back as a school administrator. Can you imagine that? A school administrator, and eventually he became the band director. Wheelock developed a very, very fine band, and he was probably a really smart guy because in the summers he would travel around the country to other Indian school band programs and recruit the best players to come to Carlisle. We know the Indian School March was written by him, and I think it was 1896. Did you want to talk about how we?
I'll talk about
Okay.
that.
But he also wrote another piece, the Aboriginal Suite. It's a 3-movement piece. Can't find the original music, but we were able to pick up a few different parts, and we recreated this piece of music. Now, interestingly, there's a lot of reference to Wheelock taking the Carlisle Indian School Band to Carnegie Hall in 1900. And I'm like, okay, I see it written. I'm on a whim, I sent an email to Carnegie Hall about asking if Denison Wheelock and the Indian School Band ever actually played there. And I'm thinking, well, that's going to end up in the trash folder. That'll go away quickly. Very soon after I sent that email, probably within 30 minutes, I got a reply, a very positive reply. They sent me a playlist of actually what happened on Wednesday, March 28, 1900 at 8:15 p.m. in the main hall of Carnegie Hall. And it has the United States Carlisle Indian Band program, which included not only the band, but the choir. So they were there. I have the proof, and obviously Carnegie Hall has the proof as well. Wheelock became a very fine cornetist, band leader, composer. Eventually they were doing things like being invited to the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. So the band traveled, and they were, you know, really well known. They played a lot in Washington, D.C. for important politicians, which you kind of find kind of odd with all the negativity surrounded by the whole premise of the Indian school, and they're down here playing for politicians. So he developed a very, very successful band, and eventually left being the band leader and became a lawyer. And that's how he spent the rest of his life.
And if you wonder what does this have to do with the Carlisle band? On the photographs that are on the wall of our band hall, not nearly as complete as in here, but we have a good selection of them, you will see many members of the Carlisle Indian School Band that played with the Carlisle band. In addition, his younger brother, James Wheelock, who was an E-flat clarinet player, God help him, what a miserable instrument, went on to become essentially a professional conductor, and conducted for many regional bands, to include a session where a period of time where he conducted the Carlisle band. So based on all the historical evidence, there is a lot of interplay between the Indian School Band and the Carlisle band, the Carlisle town band, during that period of time. And so we celebrate this as part of our legacy, that that he is an important person in our history as well as members of that band.
James,
Yes.
if I could add, there's 2 pictures over on the wall under the Ringgold bass drum. A man named Fred Carden died in 1960, but 3 directors ago, he was the director of the Ringgold band for about 20 years. And he's a graduate of the Carlisle Indians, a personal friend of
Right.
Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, and there were a number of musicians that went on to have professional careers. There was a tuba player who played in the Sousa band. There were other folks. So This was an all-star band. What
It
Dave
was a
said-
big band.
It was a big band too, yeah. Another person that's important in our history is William Paris Chambers. And most of you have probably played William Paris Chambers marches. We have, that I've been able to figure out so far, at least 8 pieces in our library. There may be a few more I haven't found. But we like to play William Paris Chambers because he was a local boy done good. He was born near Carlisle. He died near Carlisle. One summer, he was a conductor of the band. And so we feel a real strong link to him. One of the humorous things is he's buried in Newville, which is a small town, probably 7 or 8 miles outside of Carlisle. And one of our directors, Bernie Pitkin, jokes, that he goes and talks to William Paris Chambers all the time because he only lives about 2 miles away from him. But he was quite a great cornet player, not a good businessman. If you look at it, he ran a con store in New York City and had to file for bankruptcy at one point. But a very accomplished cornetist, and returned to the Carlisle area. And shortly after he came back to us and conducted us, he passed away, unfortunately. But he is part of our legacy, and we're very proud of that linkage that we have to William Paris. Now, I talked about the National Guard. National Guard's a great thing to do. Except you get paid, you get uniforms, you get instruments, and every so often you get called to active duty. Well, the 8th Pennsylvania Band, which was the Carlisle Band, and literally we've got rosters of the Carlisle Band and the 8th PA Band. It's the same people for about 20 years. Got activated in 1916 to go to the Mexican border as part of the Mexican expedition. Now, the Guard forces that were activated never got to cross the border. It was a big political fight in Congress about whether there was authority for them to go across. And so they spent their whole time sitting on the border and reading the newspaper accounts and everything, gradually getting themselves in lots of trouble because they got bored and just sitting there on the border. But it's an important part of our history that we did have that time on the border, and we have credit, if you will, campaign credit for being federalized and serving on the border. We came back and they reestablished the 8th Pennsylvania, and the band came back to what it was being. And then something happened called World War I. And you go, wow, lots of Guard units were federalized and went overseas. Well, when they formed a regiment to go from Pennsylvania, they actually had to combine multiple regiments to make a large regiment, the size that actually deployed. So 2 Pennsylvania regiments, the 8th and the 10th, were combined, but you only need one headquarters, and the headquarters includes the band. So the headquarters was the 10th PA, not the 8th PA, which is what the Carlisle Band was in. So they were not federalized. The rest of the regiment was. The band and the headquarters were not. However, we do know from the records that a large number of the members of the band did serve in World War I, either with that new regiment or in other units. That information is available through the archives. But it was kind of interesting to say, wow, they went here, but why didn't they go there? Just a political decision of which headquarters got to go. They come back, the 8th PA is reestablished, and a couple of years later, they decide to convert them to a cavalry unit. And the 8th PA becomes 104th Cavalry. And there they are on the upper right, a mounted band. Again, part of our legacy, we are a mounted band. God bless them. I don't know how the hell they did that. They also were the governor's own band. So for a couple of years, when the governor did anything in this ceremony, that band, which is, the heart of that is the Carlisle Band, was the governor's own. World War II comes around, and most of the members of the band that are of age are drafted or volunteer and go off. And they come back. And one of the biggest struggles of any community band is, where do you play? They decided to build their own band hall. And they did. Someone donated the land, they got a small mortgage to help pay for materials, and they built their own band hall that we still use today. It sits across the street from the old city cemetery. I just put there Molly Pitcher's grave. Anybody knows about Revolutionary Molly Pitcher? She's buried in Carlisle, along with a number of Revolutionary War generals. And you look at that building and you go, that can't be the band hall. I mean, look at that thing. It's a little building, 1 story. However, It actually is a very interesting building because it's got a long foyer, and then it goes back in a very large room in the back that we can put 65 to 70 people in. We have our history in there, the pictures, uniforms they've worn over the years. And I put the wisdom of our ancestors, because without that band hall, we would not have a band. We all know the struggle of trying to find a place to rehearse. COVID, doomed a lot of bands. Couldn't play in churches, couldn't play in schools. We had our own building. We could take the rules that we had. At one point, we put the director in the hallway between the foyer and the other room. We put a group on the left, a group on the right, director in the middle. We wore masks. We kept playing through COVID. Okay, and if we had not had a band hall, we would not have been able to do that. As the president of the band, there's plus and minuses of having that band hall, because we have to maintain that thing, as you know, something like this. And that's not inexpensive, insurance, all that kind of stuff. But it's well worth the cost. And so we are blessed that our ancestors were smart enough to realize, rather than scrambling to try to find a place, let's build our own. Since then, we've continued to build. I say building on the legacy. Lots of pretty uniforms. And marching was a big thing for years. We don't march anymore. Just a lot fewer opportunities for parades. And we still, even with 65 or 70 people, it was hard to even get a dozen or 15 to march. And we finally said, we're just not going to march anymore. But it was a big deal for a while. We still have that drum. You see the Carlisle band drum. Today's down band. Dave, you want to talk about that?
Well, you can pretty much see what we do. The town band survives solely on donations. We do not charge for any performances. We don't have dues. We just depend on our community for donations at our public concerts. And as the band has grown through the years, particularly the last 12 years, we've almost doubled the number of participants. It's been interesting to see that the doubling of the numbers and the quality is climbing, and the number of people in the audience has grown, and of course, the amount of donations has really increased. That we're in a good position. I mean, we're not flush, but we could cover a roof replacement if we had to, and we're able to buy new music each year. One of the things, as all the community bands face, is continually getting new members, particularly younger members. Several years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I can't remember exactly, I started this part of the concert series called a youth feature, where I will go out. I'm former band director at Carlisle High School, so I still have a lot of connections. So if I know of kids that are at the regional band level or state band level that they're really playing well, I'll invite them to come as a soloist, a featured soloist with the band, trying to entice youth. Also to let the community know what the youth are up to and how they're playing. During the summers, I will invite high school students and even college students to fill in. Like everybody else, people go on vacation. So we'll have some chairs that need to be filled and things like that for our summer programs. Most of them are outdoors. So, I try to entice college kids to keep playing through the summer. Come play with us. Even some of the high school kids, come play with us, just to keep playing in the summer. And, it's not as intense. The music, we dial the level down a bit so it's more favorable to audience listening and things like that. So that we kind of do that. Let's see what else. The kind of music that we are playing has changed through the years, and I'm not making a judgment call on good or bad, but one of the things that I looked at was, what audience are we playing for? What audience do we want to get? And what are they listening to? What are the high school kids playing that might entice them to come play with us? Okay, Sousa marches are great, I get that, but that's not necessarily where the world is in terms of music ed at the high school level. So we started to add more, I would say, contemporary pieces of music, so things that are written now, or in the early 21st century, things like that. Bringing new sounds to the band, and that was a challenge. At first, I can read faces, and you put something out there that was written 10 years ago, and they're like, "Man, what is this?" To now, I think we are embracing the literature and the rep that we're throwing out at them, and the audience is receiving it very well. We even did an entire concert featuring female composers. That group of people that seem to have been ignored, but their music is so good. It's amazing how much great literature is out there written by female composers. They're just not getting to play. So we did that, and the audience response was huge. I mean, they're just like, yes, keep doing that, stuff like that. So that's what I've been trying to do, to bring more younger people in, more audience people, and just keep ourselves known in the community. And that's pretty much it.
One of the big things we do is the annual Grand Sousa concert. This year will be the 38th. It should actually be the 40th, but we lost 2 years because of COVID. This was started by Eric Henry, who's a Carlisle High School graduate, professional tuba player in the Harrisburg Symphony. And then about 20 years ago, that transitioned to the Carlisle band running that. The nice thing is, it's kind of an all-star band for our region. And we bring in folks from all the various community bands around us. We literally get together formally once in the morning, and we do or in the early afternoon, and do the concert that evening. It's the first Sunday in August every year.
Sunday in August.
Held in the beautiful Carlisle Theater. And Yari's been there.
We have guest conducters for this. Yari has been with us. Jerry Reif, sitting back here, has been with us several times. It's really a neat experience. The community supports it very, very well. We can get as many as 700 to 800 people coming into the theater for this. It's something they look forward to. And again, it costs them nothing to come in.
This year, we've been very lucky. We got a grant to cover this. This is the most expensive single thing we do a year. It's about $3,000 for us to do it, between honoraria, renting the theater, and things like that. And we got a great grant from the Carlisle area Economic Development Committee, which covers the whole cost, which makes it much easier. Last concert we did with the town band is just an example of one we did. This was on music of American composers. And just to give you some idea, English horn soloists. How many community bands get to have an English horn soloist? We actually have 3 bassoons some days. I mean, it's amazing what we have in that band now. And a great oboe English horn player, former Army musician. That's one of the things about our musicians. We probably have about a dozen people that are former military musicians in the band. We have probably 15 or 20 music educators. We have performance majors, and we have a lot of enthusiastic people like me who are just amateurs and enjoy it. But it's a great mix of people. We also have a British brass band. The Carlisle band has 2 overlapping organizations. We have the town band, and we have a British brass band. And about 2/3 of the brass band are also in the town band. Bernie Pitkin, who's a tuba player in both bands, was our founding director. And now we have David Knott, who is the middle school music director at the Hershey School. This has been a lot of fun. We've had it for about 8 years now, and just continue to learn. We went to the NABI Championships in 2025 in Fort Wayne, first time. Didn't do great, but it was the first time we did it. It was kind of like the JV playing a varsity game for the first time. Now we kind of know what we have to do, and we're hoping to go back next year. So this is just a little collage we put together about that. It was a wonderful experience for us. British brass bands are a unique piece. They're really fun to play. I played the soprano cornet. That's a pain in the butt, but it's a lot of fun. And then we did a winter concert. We did Sleep, which is a very big British tradition. 20-minute long piece. Used to joke it's an E-flat cornet concerto. It's an ugly cornet part, but we had a lot of fun with it. Narrator, female vocalist, and it was very well received. Dave's gonna talk a little bit about our Carlisle High School band, which is the other great band in town.
Yeah, the high school band, I refer to the Carlisle band as the Carlisle Town Band, because as director of the Carlisle High School Band, I would get calls from community members about a performance, and I'm going, well, I'm the director of the high school band, and I don't know anything about this performance we're giving Sunday. It was the Carlisle band, so I always refer to it as the Carlisle Town Band versus the Carlisle High School Band. You can see some things that the high school band has been involved with. Clarence Smith was the founder of the high school band, and he was part of the Carlisle Town Band as well. It's very interesting that the high school band started in the 1926-27 school year. We are approaching the 100th anniversary of the high school band, and we are going to celebrate that milestone. We are putting together a 100-piece alumni band for a performance in which we will be playing one selection from each decade the band has been in existence, which has been an interesting journey to research, but honestly, it wasn't hard. The local newspaper had so much information, I was astounded. Even some full programs were listed in the newspaper back in the days. As far as the very first concert in 26-27, I have an original program from May of 1927 that was given to me by the daughter of the first band director, who happened to also be the first female in the Carlisle High School Band. And it wasn't the first year. I think she bugged her dad to get her in by the third year. So, very interesting. This concert's going to be very interesting. We've got lots of memorabilia we're going to be displaying from the 100 years. And like I said, we're going to be playing a piece from each decade. I've done some moments. I celebrated the 75th anniversary with a commissioning by Dr. John Buzz Jones. Some of you may know Buzz Jones. He did a piece called Penn Street Green. Our high school is located on Penn Street, and green and white is our color. So he composed this. It's all about starting the band, and the alma mater is infused in this and the whole thing. Through that, I actually have met 3 members of the first band from 1926-27. Incredible. And you can really find some information out by talking with them. And I met them at the 75th anniversary. They have since departed our world, but it was very interesting that I tracked them down. I invited them. I had the daughter of the first band director there, some of the family members of Clarence Smith present. Takes a little investigating to find these people, but they're there. And it was quite a moment in time to be able to meet them and get some information from them about their time in the band. So high school band continues on. I retired in 2012. We have commissioned things. Some of you may have heard of Jay Dawson. In 1992, I commissioned him to write Gettysburg, the Third Day. It is still published. It's a very cool piece. Jay and I are friends. We worked with the Bluecoats Drum and Bugle Corps together many years ago. And we just happened to be sitting having an adult beverage, doing a break before a contest, and he's talking about his ideas about this tune, looking for somebody to commission it, and I just went, I'm the guy. So that did well. And then for the 85th anniversary, my final year at Carlisle, I commissioned R. Roy Mitchell, who's a Pittsburgh person, to write a piece for us for it's brass and percussion. It's called By the Numbers. So it's 8-piece brass and 5-piece percussion. thought that was kind of interesting to put that together. So, and it's based on, some of it's based on the zip code of Carlisle, 17013. So lots of things have been happening in that zone too, all founded by the person who was associated with the town band.
And I don't know, I was gonna do this, I didn't tally it up, we probably have at least a dozen, if not more, members of the town band that are alumni of the high school band, very close relationship. You know, it feeds into us, people go away, they get married, they come back, the kids get older, they come back to the band. And it's really been good. This is the piece of music that we provided, this is the Carlisle Indian School March, which will, those of you gonna play this afternoon will get to hear. We know the march existed, it's listed in numerous documents, but we could never find the score. Local historian gave us a copy of the piano reduction, and he was, our arranger was able to go in that. And because, you know, it's like a Sousa March in its structure, and the kind of things that would happen in a Sousa March would probably happen in this. And you have to understand, there was a lot of knowledge between the Indian School and Sousa's band, especially when he was the Marine band. They played a lot of the same events. Pratt knew Sousa. Pratt was the one who founded the school. There was a relationship there, and Wheelock clearly wanted to write something that was quite a bit like a Sousa March. So you will see that this afternoon. Final things, you know, we all had the same challenges. Like any one of you could have put this up here if you're in a community band and said, yeah, we're wrestling with that. You know, how do we continue to build ourselves up? How do we make sure we're fiscally solvent? Future band hall. Before COVID, we were seriously looking at expanding the band hall. Well, that's a pretty expensive task, but we can't, we're running out of space. We actually have one of those mirrors that you use on real tight corners, because we have to put some percussion in the foyer, and they look at the mirror to see Dave over here, because we've outgrown the band hall. A good and bad thing. Schedule. Between the two bands, we do 25 to 30 events a year. So there's some deconfliction that has to happen because we have the same personnel in both. Performance venues, there are only two places in Carlisle that are big enough for the band. The high school and the Carlisle Theater. That's it. We're too big to go any other place unless we're outdoors. Resourcing, anybody who deals with this, no, insurance costs are up, repair costs are up, everything is up, so that's a continuing struggle. We've done a lot of work on publicity. We have a new publicity person for the band, and she has done a great job in using social media and getting stuff out. It takes work, but she's done a good job at it. And then lastly is all these relationships we have, which are all successful, continue to take work. And it takes effort by Dave and I and other members of the band to make sure that we maintain those relationships with the high school, the other surrounding high schools around us, which have strong music programs, the various colleges and others around us. It's a day-to-day requirement. We have to get out and talk to them and look for opportunities, and we've been successful at it, but it doesn't do it on itself. We just have to keep working.
We've found that when we involve interesting topics for a theme for a concert or invited guests, it brings in more people. I'm an adjunct at Messiah University, and it just so happens that this year at our spring concert coming up in less than a month, we are going to be featuring the Messiah University French Horn Quartet, playing, some of you may know this, is a piece called The Four Hornsmen. And first of all, the students are very fine players, and they wanted to do this. They did it on campus, and they said, man, we'd love to do this again, so I got contacted and we're programming it. And while that's going on, our resident composer who did the Dennis and Wheelock transcriptions for us was working on another premiere for the band called River's Edge. And I was talking to Dave and I said, you know, I want to do a little encore with this quartet because it's really special, they're coming over. And he goes, I have an idea. He was working on a new piece for us. He went back to the beginning and put a French horn quartet feature throughout the piece. So we will be premiering that. And the kids I call them kids, the young adults in the French horn quartet are super excited. They actually have rehearsed once with us. We kind of crammed everybody together to get 4 horn players in the corner of the room so we could rehearse. They're super excited. We're super excited to have this collaboration with a university, which we've not done before. So you never know what doors might open when you do something like this. So there you go.
That's it. Any questions?
When is your spring concert and also the concert for your alumni?
Well, the spring concert is April 12th. It's a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock at Carlisle High School. And the 100th anniversary concert will be, gotta get this right, Sunday, May 2nd, 2027 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Carlisle High School.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.